Chapter 12. No matter how peaceful the empty house felt that morning, I could not help notice the sense of dread that hung in the air. Countless disturbances had plagued me for so long since those aliens had claimed my home as theirs, from sounds and voices that seemed to come from nowhere to terrible nightmares and unpleasant visions, but even a morning free of these nuances was marked by how unsettling the air felt. I clung to the assumption that they would return any time now, barreling through the door or windows as their whims suited them, yelling my name and screaming their reason for their absence without prior notice. The day passed by, however, dull and dreary, and though I savored this blissful respite, I soon found myself walking out the door to appease my morbid sense of curiosity at the odd situation. My first steps out into the quiet town did not seem too alarming. I strolled through the streets, much like I did before the emergence of those things, and heard not a sound from the town. I walked around, enjoying the stroll that did not include one of those heavy beings tugging on my arm, or their infernal shouting and arguing, until finally I realized the severity of the situation that caused the queer feeling hanging in the air. I was alone. The streets were not devoid of just the extraterrestrials that had been squatting in my home, but free of everyone. Buildings were obviously empty, the streets devoid of motor cars, and sidewalks completely abandoned. With that familiar sense of panic setting in, I reached for a phone and attempted to contact anyone, but none of my classmates or my mother would answer. Surely I had been taken to another reality yet again. Surely those things had pulled me through the twilight-tinged abyss in my sleep. But why? And how would I return? I had faced far too many ordeals such as this one in the past. Each time I had been saved in some way by the crawling chaos itself. I had my guesses as to why. I was certain it truly wished to create some form of hybrid offspring, but for some reason desired or required my consent to do so, and forced me into these situations in order to create a sense of appreciation for it. But now I had no guidance at all. I had not seen my protector for some time. The King in Yellow could not offer his aid. No hints from the star spawn who sensed the situation. And so I ran from place to place, the classroom that they had infiltrated, the shopping district that they had frequented, and even the beachside resort we had vacationed at. I could find no one, of course, and the sense of dread began to change into a frantic panic. I knew I relied far too much on those cursed things. I detested them so but required their protection from events such as this. I was fully aware of the cruel joke played on me, for I knew if they had never chosen me as the target of their desires I would never find myself in places like this. But even a world where I was forced to fend off the advances of those things was better than one of complete isolation. I wandered back towards my home, walking through the empty streets, knowing I would find nothing at home just as I found nothing anywhere else. I seemed to find solace in the fact that the whispers were back, maddening hushed voices repeating words I had heard before, guttural sounds I could understand but could not translate. These seemed to come from my own mouth, however, much to my surprise. Slowly I made my way back, taking longer than usual, perhaps due to the stumbling and lurching, confused and panicked more than I had ever been before. And as I passed that alley where it had all started, I looked up at the bright, glowing full moon, just as I did so long ago. The moon stared back at me that night, and with a cruel smile it winked, donning a crimson hue yet again, that terrible red aura claiming the sky instead of the dreary grey one. I had seen this before, a mirror image of the sky that accompanied the beginning of this tale some time ago. Indeed, as if I had gone back in time, or something had desired me to relive this encounter again. A humanoid creature gained form in the red sky and turned its attention towards me. A powerful, rubbery body of black, two large membranous wings, oddly turned horns and a head with no face. The night gaunt took chase as I ran, the same direction I ran long ago, to the same dead end that ended my flight all too quickly. Its entire face opened up into a mouth turned sideways, menacing teeth lined its jaws, and was the roar in the air coming from the creature, or did I just hear it in my head? No matter how much I wished to be free of those creatures, I wished I would see the scene unfold in proper, but the hand that reached through the creature would not appear this time, as its attack sent me reeling from one walk to another in that cramped alley. Finally, I was given guidance to escaping this situation, a lifeline thrown to me by my protector. A faint glow came from my chest pocket, where I kept that crystal-like trinket it had given me in the cop city of Relia and had received protection from numerous times before. I pulled it out and held it in my palm, black shadows spewing from it, and in a blue flash an object emerged in the air. It was the mirror of Nitocris, which I had seen in the possession of the outer god before. I held it in the air and faced the mirror's surface at the monster, and with a wishful cry begged for the legendary item's assistance. A number of black tentacles sprang from the mirror, groping for the nigaunt, grabbing it and binding it instantly. The winged thing resisted, but was slowly tugged into the mirror, disappearing from sight in a flash of a bright, white light. I dropped the cursed mirror to the ground immediately, thankful for its assistance, but exhausted nonetheless. A crying voice caught my attention from the street, and a small body came rushing towards me, calling my name. It was the blue-haired great old one I had met the day before, or what I perceived to be the day before, asked to take care of by my mother until its proper place could be found. It seemed distraught, even sorry for some reason, and after a couple of questions I realized that it had been the one to send me to this empty place. Its face looked inquisitive as I asked it to send me back, truthfully wishing to return to the life I had before. As much as I wished for normal days again, this was not my wish. This empty place was nothing but maddening. Before the creature could respond, however, a small shadow crept upon us, a small, spherical winged creature interrupting my pleas to return. It was the lugger, though unlike before it did not seem to have that calming presence that I had guessed. It purposefully masked itself with the other day. Bright red eyes accompanied its words of frustration, clearly upset with me for some reason, but before I could figure out why the creature began to change. The small body morphed, gaining mass almost instantly and changing into the true form of a lugger I had imagined. A monstrous, green, scaled body that rose well into the air, towering above us, with long tentacles and two great wings adorning its body, flapping and wriggling about. A reptilian face leered at me, with a row of sharp teeth lining its large mouth. The creature offered no explanation to its actions as its tentacles sprang forth, seeking me as their target, but to the creature's surprise, its tentacle would end up in a heap on the ground, black blood spraying across the alley, and a menacing-looking melee weapon lay at my feet. It is said that the mirror of Nitocris will unleash evil upon those who look into it. Time and time again, however, that evil came to my assistance. Surely it was evil that emerged from the mirror as the silver-haired form came from reflective surface, but I could feel nothing but relief at the sight of the malign deity. A scaled abomination raged at the fake girl's appearance, but it was ignored as the intruder's attention was only on me. It held the cursed mirror to my face and asked me to look at the reflection. I saw myself for just an instant before it was replaced with something else, a vision that was still of me but crystallized or petrified in some way. With an exclamation and a flash of light, the faceless god shattered the glass, and a moment later I was standing in the park, confused at first, but soon I was sure in my own world. The two aliens were joined by the living flame and the king in yellow, still bathed in the intimidated crimson aura of the sky and the shadow of the dangerous lugger in front of us. The creatures surrounded me and began their normal musings. I could not be sure how long it was since I had last seen them, but it seemed I had been petrified, likely by the lugger's master, and they had been attending to my body for some time. I shuddered to think of what they had done for it, but now was not the time for such fear, as the monster bore down on us in anger. The monster began divulging its scheme. It seemed this thing, obsessed with human culture like so many other aliens were, had conspired to use me to acquire the entirety of Earth-based entertainment and games, planning every event of the day prior, from the blue-haired creature's arrival to the attack by the Shoggoths, in order to seal me in an isolated world and have me lead it to a certain game store with a stockpile of rare games. Absurd as the story sounded, I had heard it too many times. These creatures were willing to put reality itself in jeopardy for the sake of the games and stories we produced. The lugger in its rage somehow summoned a horde of creatures for assistance, a large number of aliens that appeared out of nowhere but seemed ready to attack. I had seen many of these before now, at Brillier, in visions and dreams, and even in the Necronomicon I had read before this all started in what seemed to be a completely different life. Fans, claws, wings and tentacles were common among the crowd, each creature more horrifying than the last. The amorphous, slime-like Shoggoths were present, their mindless chanting audible amongst the roars and screeches coming from the congregation of creatures. The clawed, fungi creatures from Yuggoth known as the Mahiro were there, as were the old ones, barrel-bodied creatures with organs like starfish for heads. There were the Baiki, the serpent men, and the servants of the great old one Tsafagura, and even other creatures I could not recognize or name. All these things came upon us in attack, but were met with force from the deities at my side. The massive creatures were mowed down, sometimes one by one, or sometimes in great explosions or bursts that claimed a large number of monsters in a single blow. The crawling chaos donned its usual armor, made to mimic suits it had seen in our action shows, and took to its usual form of close combat bred from outer space confrontations. The living flame summoned its massive pistol-like apparatuses that shot beams of fire, and laid waste to entire groups of creatures at a time with bursts of flame. The King in Yellow whipped around the hostile aliens with cyclones conjured from his fingertips, flinging them here and there. The horde of monsters drew closer, however, to myself and the small blue-haired alien behind me, as the brutality of the three protectors was struggling to match the sheer number of attackers. But reinforcements were soon to be had, as a number of fork-like weapons flew through the sky, dispatching an alien each as they struck their targets. My mother, a true deity hunter, had arrived, standing on the back of the Shantak head of the Furrer. As the unspeakable one struggled with a large number of night gaunts, streaks of eyes flew across the park and into the rubbery bodies of the hunters, mocking the arrival of the star spawn. And with these two forces added to their ranks, the horde of creatures soon thinned to nothing as they finally stared down the logger. With the mass of creatures defeated, the outer god walked forward to finish off the logger. A massive tentacle surprised it, however, hidden underground, bursting forth and grabbing the armored being, lifting it in the sky. The armor began to crack under the pressure of the tentacles, wrapped around its arms, legs, and even neck, as the helmet cracked under their might, revealing the silver hair and green eyes of the deity. As the tentacles seemed to multiply from the logger's body and threatened to squeeze my protector to death, I looked around for any aid, and on the ground found that brutal melee weapon that it seemed to favor, that I had used before. I rushed to grab it, and tossed it in the air. It caught the weapon and with a smirk, immediately cut the tentacles with a flurry of swipes. Freed from the tentacles, the faceless god took the weapon and changed it, in a flash of light, changing its shape to the form of a sword, before viciously cutting the monstrous creature apart. And with that, I managed to survive another ordeal. How many had it been since that silver-haired form of a girl first arrived? Remembering each and every one was a chore, recalling the fear and exhaustion genuinely taxing. As the crimson ore vanished and the deities clung to me, joined by the small blue-haired great old one, I was thankful to breathe the fresh air of a world I was used to, trying so hard to ignore that unpleasant, heavy presence that accompanied them. As I have said before, I knew how much I relied on these creatures, for there would be no way to survive these attacks and trials without the assistance of beings of such great power, though whether or not I would suffer these ordeals without having met them, I cannot say. Perhaps I attracted them for some reason, marked by blood or ancestry in some way, or perhaps I was genuinely unlucky. But I was alive, and not alone, and for at least a moment I could be thankful for that. Maybe someday these creatures would move on, their whims directing them to somewhere, someone, or something else. But I would endure, as long as I could, because that's all I could do. Time would move on, life would continue, mundane events would not fit for recording would come and go. The great old one Gadnatho would spend time with us as a classmate like the others had, but it would soon leave, though not before promising I would see it again someday. The rest remained the same, for the most part. My mother would come and go as her hunting trips required. The Starspawn would frequently visit as well. My two classmates, still seemingly ignorant to the true nature of these creatures, would remain friends with them nonetheless, though if I pried deeply I could tell they saw glimpses of visions and dreams of being swapped into a past or future by the great race. Nyarlathotep, Sisajura, and Haster, three deities of great power, would remain stubborn in their goals, the terrible, abominable combination of species of alien and human. And for myself, I could do nothing but record. These tales will be doubted, I am sure. The photographs enclosed, though vivid as they are, will be called into question solely due to how far such fakery can be carried. Still, I feel it is imperative to relay my experiences in whole, not as a fanciful tale but as a word of warning. There are things in this universe we are not meant to know. Maddening creatures, cyclopean cities, undamnable power lies beyond the veil. It is my fear that inquiring minds will seek to fulfill curiosity and unleash horrors I endured upon themselves and humanity, significant events that I would not have survived if it were not of the assistance of a being of cosmic influence such as Nyarlathotep. Above all, do not doubt these things' influence on the human mind. Even in their indifference they call out to those nearby, subtle whispers of suggestion or screams of madness that can drain a sound mind in an instant. It is my assumption that I was protected somehow, either by purpose by Nyarlathotep, or by some protection afforded me through blood or ancestry. Even then, from time to time, I would catch a glimpse of sheer insanity, visions or dreams that surely will break me. Will there be a day when they turn on me? Will they break me out of pure interest? Because I can see it. I can see all of them. Nyarlathotep, Sithajura, Haster, Gatnathora, the star spawn, the joined by robed beings, humanoid but unlikely humans, and they gather in earnest, abandoning their complacent forms, the malign or now tangible in the air, as if their hateful purpose was dripping to the ground, and they dance and sing, like some blasphemous occult ritual, perhaps praying to something more evil, or making preparations to bring it to this world. They chant the same words that have plagued me for quite some time, guttural words clearly intelligent. By God, these words have left my own mouth at times after waking in a pool of sweat in the middle of the night. In a monotone voice they cry, Inna, 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 Wurtsa. And so we reach our end. A great thank you goes out to the resurrected H.P. Lovecraft, a Fortune's anime board, for his amazing adaptation. I claim no credit for creating the stories, nor do I intend to distribute them for monetary gain. Hope everyone enjoys these as much as I have. The end.